And welcome back for that break, Pete's. We are here in the JJ Zone. Join the Journey Radio today, talking about you should compare you with you. Compare you with you and no one else, because comparing yourself with others is just inherently unfair. I talked about it a little bit in the monologue. I want to talk a little bit more about that in this segment of the program, and also go into more detail about why it is that we are so prone to make these comparisons. So, first off, let's talk about the unfairness, the inherent unfairness of comparing ourselves with others. You have to understand, and I'm sure all of us, we can get this. When you're approaching any situation in life, okay, what is it that you bring to that situation? You're going to make a response, some type of response. Sometimes the response is habitual. For a lot of people, that's true. Sometimes the response is consciously chosen. That's true for a minority of the population. Most people just simply respond out of habit. But you're going to give some type of response to whatever stimuli is there in your environment. And what is it that determines that response? Well, as I was saying just a few seconds ago, for a lot of people that's habit. But where did that habit come from? Right? It's like there had to have been some sort of combination of knowledge, experience, perspective, background, all this stuff that combines together to formulate this habit that most people just execute when they're giving a response to external stimuli. Even if you're not playing out of habit, even if you're, giving a response by conscious choice, meaning that you're consciously choosing what your response is going to be, you're still going to formulate that response out of your specific combination of perspectives and background and knowledge, experience, all that stuff, right? Well, you are the only one who has your particular combination of knowledge and experience and background and perspective and all of that. You're the only one. You're the only one. So when you compare yourself with somebody else, typically what we're comparing, we don't think we're comparing responses, but we actually are. We think we're comparing results. We look at the results someone else has in his or her life, and then we compare that with the results we have in our lives. And we're like, how come this person's so much better than me? This person's so much better than me. But really, what you're comparing is response, not results. Because results come from one thing and one thing only, and that's action. So when you compare results, what you're comparing is the action that's some other person took versus the action that you took. That's really what you're doing. And if you were to be more conscious of that, okay, you'd make your comparison a bit more fair. But even that has some inherent unfairness in it, because you go and you do this comparison. It's like, well, what is it that decides what my action is? It's your thinking. And the thinking comes from attitude, assumptions, perspective, self-talk. And all these things are grounded in your unique combination of knowledge, experience, etc., etc. So there is no fair comparison between two people, because we're all so unique that, even for someone who was, people who were brought up in the same family. I mean, I look at my own siblings and I look at, myself. That's even an unfair comparison, because even though there's a lot of similarities with, background, the way we were raised, there's still substantial differences in knowledge, because all three of us, okay, me, my brother, and my sister, we've all made different choices regarding what price we're willing to pay to get the knowledge that we have. We all have different levels of knowledge. We have different experiences in our background. We have different perspectives on the world and, everything around us. So, even, for, comparison between me and my siblings has some inherent unfairness in it, because, you're not comparing like with like. You're comparing like with unlike. There's only one you. I mean, it's been said oftentimes that only you can do, whatever mission, you know, God has in store for you to do. There's only one person who can fill that role, and that's you. Only you can play the part that God wants you to play. So, by that same token, by that same logic, comparing yourself with someone else is just inherently unfair. Now, even though we may understand the inherent unfairness of comparing ourselves with others, most of us still do it. Why is that? Well, it's very simple when you understand your biological hardwiring. As I said in the monologue, it all goes back to biology. We all have this inherent, biological hardwiring within us that it's natural for us to compare ourselves with others, because what we're really trying to do is assess how well we fit in. This all goes back to a basic desire to be loved, right? It's like begets like. So if you want to be loved by other people, you need to be like them. And the way that we know that we're like them is we're always assessing, constantly assessing. It's like an internal thermostat, like I was explaining in the monologue. We'll have this internal thermostat by which we're assessing the quote unquote temperature of the people around us. And, we're using that to set our own internal temperature. It's just natural. It's like we all want to be normal. And so we have this biological hardwiring that moves us in that direction of normality. So this is why it's so important to make sure that the friends you keep are good friends, to make sure that the people you spend substantial amounts of time with are going to benefit you, are going to propel you forward. It's so important, not just the people, but everything that you take into yourself. So all of the media that you consume, you really need to be careful about that, because it all has an effect and an influence on you. And, whether or not you're going to reach your fullest potential, whether or not you're going to live your best life, is directly tied to these influences from people and media and just everything in your environment that you take into yourself. All of these things are just going to be just, so influential in the way that you think, the way that you perceive, the actions that you take. It's going to affect so very much. So it's so important that you get your arms around this, right? It's so important you get your arms around this, because this is why, the example I gave in the monologue is a classic one, because it's so appropriate. Fat people who hang out with fat people find it harder to lose weight. Why? Because they're sensing the people around them are fat. So that creates this sense of fat is normal in their brain, and their biological hardwiring resists the efforts that they may employ to lose weight. Same way with, fat people being around skinny people. They find it easier to lose weight because they look around them. It's like, I'm not like the people around me. I'm fat and everyone else is skinny. So then they're leveraging that biological hardwiring to their advantage. That biological hardwiring just influences them to, change the temperature of their internal thermostat. So then they find it easier to lose weight because they're using that drive to be normal, to be accepted, to fit in. They're using that drive to their advantage. And, this is something that all of us can do. We have to pay attention to our environment, understanding if you want the life that you want, that you say you want, that you're dreaming about, to get that life, you really need to be attentive to your environment. And you really need to be putting into place those elements in your environment that will propel you forward, so that your natural biological hardwiring works for you rather than working against you. So simply understanding the way that things work isn't going to help you. Knowledge itself, we always just say knowledge is power. Knowledge is not power. Okay, because results come from one thing and one thing only, and that is action. Okay, it's only what we do. It's the application of knowledge that is power. Knowledge is not power. The application of knowledge is power. So knowing how you're, biologically hardwired to be a certain way. I mean, that alone is not sufficient for you to live your best life. To live your best life, you need to apply that knowledge and put it into practice. So, that really is, how this works, right? So I've just explained to you. So now, now we need to put this into practice. And there are ways that we can put this into practice that are especially beneficial for Latter-day Saint singles. But I'm looking at the clock here and I see that we're just about out of time for this segment. So let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back from the break, I want to go deeper into this idea of let's take this, natural biological hardwiring and leverage it for situations in which, we LDS singles constantly find ourselves. How can this help us to overcome the challenges we have as Latter-day Saint singles? How can we leverage this biological hardwiring to our advantage? We're going to get to that on the other side of the break. I will see you there on the other side.